Hi, everyone, and welcome back. It's been a while to the Kelly Mental Health Clinic podcast, located in Thunder Bay, Ontario. I'm super excited to be back with lovely Linda Kelly, CEO and owner of Kelly Mental Health Clinic and chair of the board of the Kelly Mental Wellness Foundation. So I was just telling Linda, this is the first time we've actually talked on virtually, really, and done a podcast episode since 2021. So it's nice to be back and welcome, Linda.
Hello.
I know it's so interesting. I always liked doing like these types of intros when we have more people, but it's just kind of entertaining when it's just you and I because we just say hi and everything. So we really wanted to kind of chat today and get into International Women's Day, the topic of International Women's Day. As you guys know, or for some of you that don't know, it is on March 8th every year. It's a pretty big celebratory event. It takes place in multiple cities across the world, basically, and nationally, globally. And this year's theme is to embrace equity. And to me, International Women's Day has always been super important, especially working for Kelly Mental Health and being able to highlight certain things through our organization, which up until last year was ran by mostly women. So until we got Andrew. So it's been kind of nice to do some things. We try to do some education during the days. We try our best to kind of come together and to highlight and celebrate women's achievements and all that kind of stuff. So this year we wanted to take a different kind of approach to Women's Day or International Women's Day and actually really kind of get into the nitty gritty of things and maybe not just turn to social media and do a little post and just to have an open discussion about women and gender stereotypes and what you could do to make a difference in your organization and even within your relationships and partnerships. So we're going to get right into it. That's my spiel.
Wow. So you really want a little bit more depth. You want more to speak to what this is about. And the thing that I would love to be able to start with is that I've always been terrified of saying anything about this day because I'm always afraid I don't know enough about it to speak with any authority. And isn't that so reflective of so many women's experiences?
Mm-hmm.
Feeling like we
Absolutely.
just don't know enough, and yet the people that know even less are more likely to speak up, apparently.
Now, yeah, that usually happens in 2023 now that we're in. I'm noticing it like a lot. I'm the PR and marketing coordinator for KMH, and I live on social media, so I get to see all the fun banters back and forth, and I get to see all these social media groups, and it's just wild. So yeah, it's been interesting.
Mm-hmm. So where do you start if you're talking about, a day that's about women? First of all, the first thing that I do notice, and it's painful to see this, is that people will see a date that is supposed to be about women, and then they'll go, well, what about everybody else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It kind of, whenever there's a day celebrating one group, there's always, naysayers and people that just don't want to see that, or they just feel underrepresented themselves. But the whole point of having a day like this is to have an opportunity to look at some of the history, to understand a different group of people from yourself, or even just to give light to some stories that sometimes we don't want to acknowledge exist.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't another woman that hasn't, walked into a dark parking lot having her keys in her fingers in a way that she could use as a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't another woman I know that hasn't thought about uh, how how vulnerable they feel when they're strapping a child into a car seat because their back is to the world and somebody could grab them. And there isn't another person that doesn't think about if they have to protect their own drink or watch out for who's truly a friend. And like there's so much danger out there, and people don't like to acknowledge that. And people don't like to acknowledge even the simple factor of most new cars, when you put them in park, they unlock,
Mm-hmm.
and how dangerous that can be for some people.
Yeah, I've actually never thought about that, about the car situation. My car's old, but I really don't think about things like that. So you make a valid point.
Mm-hmm. These are just things that come across my therapy room all the
Yeah.
time.
I was gonna say, you and we kind of brought up a few points yesterday, and I think that the points were extremely valid, Linda. Let's kind of start with, because we got a lot to go through. So let's kind of start with women in business. Let's talk about some of your experiences with starting a business. I can share my lovely experiences as well. So, how did you kind of start? I know we've talked about it before, but first for our listeners that aren't gonna know our previous podcast, which you guys should really check out. It's really fun. Mm-hmm. We talk about lots of stuff. But let's talk about it. So how did you start KMH, and what was kind of your defining moment with deciding to start your clinic?
It's a big question. I was tired of working in a workplace that treated employees like they infantilized them. And that was a very women-centric workplace as well. But, the management had this tendency to be behind closed doors all the time. And for long periods of time, I was one of those people behind those closed doors. And I would hear the things that they would say about people, the negativity towards women that came into the workplace and then wanted to have a family, or wanted to take a maternity leave, or women that maybe couldn't keep up with the workload that they demanded, and just like the very unsettling things that people would say about each other. And the problem is that it created a culture that you really feared messing up, because you knew that you'd get talked about. And people have their reasons for doing what they do and expressing themselves this way. Like, I understand things are not easy in business, but I just needed to get out. I needed to create a workplace where you didn't worry about those things, where I always tried to speak as if that person was sitting right beside me. Because even if I have a problem with someone or something is bothering me, my first question needs to be to them, hey, what's happening? Instead of this kind of assumption and just like this feeling, just calling other people weak, or just, it was so negative. I was sick of it. It was killing me.
And obviously, like I mentioned, like we mostly have females working at KMH. That's not by choice. That's just how it happened. I know that you've always wanted to. I mean, we've mentioned that a few times. I guess, what is the biggest thing? Were you worried about having? I know that we talked about this as well, but were you worried about having an all female staff? And maybe if we can talk about some of the stereotypes that are connected to having an all-female staff.
So yeah, I get asked that more than is comfortable by people going, oh, what's it like to work? It must be rough working in an office with all women, eh? And I'm like, mental health women? Well, people that practice what they preach are deadly to work with. They're awesome, awesome people. Unfortunately, what we do encounter from time to time is people that go into the helping profession because they have their own trauma. And so there can be a challenge. And even with myself, where we have to make sure we don't bring our own trauma, our own dynamics, our old stuff to the workplace. But yeah, I do get asked that by people, just expecting that, women are catty and women are cliquey and women are just like bad to each other. And that really bothers me. It bothered me that some of the older men that I have encountered while being in business have been openly misogynistic towards me, treated me like I was stupid right off the bat. Even just the first person that was my landlord said, he literally we were talking about this door opener thing and the security system, and he said, oh, well, I'll go down there with you because I don't want them to think I'm leaving this in the hands of some woman. And I was like, what
Yeah.
What did you just say? But as a woman, and as with my past, my tendency is it's a trauma response. It's called tend and befriend. My reaction is not to, like, I can't freak out and call people out right away. It kind of takes me a moment, or sometimes a couple of days, to reflect on what just happened and what was just said. And that has stuck with me for 7 years. The fact that he just, looked at me like like I couldn't handle things on my own, or,
Mhm.
he would pop in and he would just make these comments about, oh, your little program. And like, dude.
I own a successful business. Yeah. I mean, and it happens so often, more often than it should, right? Like even for myself, like starting my business, like it's small and that's okay right now. And this is my full-time job. I love what I do. And I love helping, smaller like local businesses. That's just, but still, I still get phone calls and I've still had consults with some men that are like just the way that they talk to you is just so like demeaning, and it's just like it's like right off the bat it's asking, oh, like I don't know if you have experience in this, but I know it's a little difficult for you. And like and like their tone changes. I've noticed like the biggest thing is when I've dealt with certain people in my field is that and mostly men, and just that's just the honest truth of what I've dealt with, is that yeah, they kind of like their tone changes and they kind of come at me with like a weird different, it's a different tone. And
Mhm.
it's hard to, and I'm sure in that moment when you were talking to that landlord, like you were like you said, it's just it's shocking almost, because you're like, like what's happening? I have, I'm qualified, I do my training, I know what I'm doing, this is, and it's just it's crazy that it's still happening. And I think that it happens more often than we tend to even realize. Even for myself, like living in like the media world, seeing different marketing ads and stuff like that, and still to this day how much women are sexualized in the media, even downright to like new series is like that I watch on Netflix or whatever the case may be. But just certain things that, and just certain things that are said is just, it's mind-blowing to me. That and also seeing, I was watching Hot in Cleveland, and Betty White, I mean, she's amazing. But certain things that have been said throughout that a show, which is a little bit older, you couldn't get away with half that stuff that is said now, right? And like that's something that I often see, and I kind of find it entertaining. There's a few
Mhm.
like recent articles, they're asking certain shows to do like basically to come back and say like, oh, you guys should come back and return to the screen kind of thing. And most of their cast members are saying like, no, we couldn't fit into this type of world that we live in now, right? Because cancel culture, what you and I've talked about on previous episodes and in person, is so intense. And that's, I think, what kind of trails back to what you said, like you want to say things but sometimes we can't because we have to hold back and personally, right? So it's
Mhm.
difficult, and and having situations like that take place is just, it happens more
Mhm.
often than none.
Well, I have a situation that happened. It was 2 years ago, and actually I mean, actually pre-COVID, I guess, because we were doing quite well financially. Things were really doing well. So what I was doing was looking into a purchase, basically a purchase of another business. And I actually had a male colleague that was also looking into purchasing. And
Mhm.
what was very interesting was we compared notes at one point, because the real estate person, he to my male colleague said, okay, well, you just have to prove that you have 15% of the asking price as a down payment in cash before we'll talk any further or we'll share our books. The same real estate person told me they needed to know I had 35%.
Wow.
And I
Wow, I
had an
didn't know that.
established business and my male colleague did not.
Wow.
He had a like his holdings were just kind of in a different category. But
Hmm.
what was interesting was we just like the comparison of notes and how we were treated differently. They wouldn't even show me their books, but I'm in a helping profession, and because of where I come from and because of cancel culture and this and that, I've never been able to talk about that or to even
Hmm.
call anybody out on that. Like
Hmm.
how awful that was, that just someone immediately treats you different.
Hmm.
And and it really does make you question yourself, like, wow, maybe I'm nothing.
Hmm.
Maybe
Yeah.
I shouldn't be playing this game.
Hmm. I've thought like that so many times towards my business. Like after those kind of like those types of conversations, I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And which is crazy to think, right? Like we shouldn't be put in a place or a predicament to feel like that. And to it's almost like I feel like I feel attacked and I feel like my back's up against the wall kind of thing. And you
Mhm.
have talked about being in those types of predicaments, and it's really unfortunate. And it's still happening, so often. And the next topic I really wanted to touch on is women in health. a broad topic, but something that you had mentioned is, what's kind of going on in currently going on in the States, and with like women and their reproductive health and everything like that. So I kind of
Mhm.
wanted just to have an open discussion about that. And if you want to start us off with that.
Right. That is something that's been very, very painful to watch happen,
Mhm.
and it's happening very rapidly across the US. And the same vitriol is very present in Canada. People that want to take away the bodily autonomy of women, and have in many, many US states right now, by basically denying their ability to terminate an unwanted pregnancy, an unhealthy pregnancy, to wait until they are at death's door or septic, to be able to remove a fetus that is not even going to make it anyway, which means a lot of the times those women are not going to make it.
Mhm.
It's horrible. It's a threat. It's the opposite of autonomy and freedom. People that are able to reproduce need to be able to have reproductive choice. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that.
Mhm.
That is the bodily autonomy is the only freedom really that matters. It's our ability to make a choice about whether or not we want to move forward with a pregnancy. And this idea that because somebody else says so, that we would have to suffer through a miscarriage. Let's go back to the day that I actually did say something publicly, because I
Oh
don't
yeah.
speak out on a lot of stuff. I do not talk about stuff
I'm
I'm
glad you
so
mentioned that.
afraid,
I'm glad you
right?
mentioned that because yeah, let's get into it. The
Yeah,
one
let's get into
time,
it.
yeah, yeah, the one
There's
time you do
one
speak out.
time, the
Yeah.
one time that I actually said anything that was remotely maybe controversial.
Hmm.
I spoke at a pro-choice rally because I had had a miscarriage, and my body did not understand that it was miscarrying. And so, it was weeks and weeks over the Christmas holidays and into January. I was carrying essentially a dead fetus.
Hmm.
And I spoke about this because it was heartbreaking. It was a wanted pregnancy.
Hmm.
And finally, at the time that they performed the D&C, which is an abortion procedure, I felt so much relief. It was like this trauma had finally ended and I could heal. And I spoke out about that, about my personal story. Now I have 3 children. And we had two, one after the other, and I'm so blessed. I'm so grateful. But I wanted them, and I
Hmm.
was ready for them. And after I spoke out about that miscarriage and the need for reproductive health and freedom of choice, I was attacked. I was attacked through my business. People left negative Google reviews about a therapy business because of my personal expression, and left Facebook reviews too, and they left messages like
Hmm.
just about calling me a murderer.
Hmm.
Like, it was awful. It was awful
Hmm.
because, of course, here I'm a person that is always going to ask myself first, okay, is that person right? Did I do something wrong? I need to do some self exploration. And I just, to this day, I can't believe that
Hmm.
somebody would be so cruel.
Yeah. I got to see all that stuff as well. And it was heartbreaking because I know that your intentions, and you and I had talked openly about you attending the rally and everything like that. And it was personal. Like that's just what you wanted to do. I stood behind you as long, like most of us, it's your choice and that's fine. And then unfortunately that's what, so speaking out, no matter what, like it's kind of like a catch 22, right? We want to have these podcasts, we want to control, like I feel like this is our way kind of controlling the narrative, and obviously to raise awareness on these important issues. With that being said, there's still these types of keyboard warriors and whatnot that are going to attack us. And I'm still to this day, I'm extremely blessed and proud that we are able to use this platform and we can talk like this, like about these types of topics. Because a lot of workplaces, unfortunately, they don't have these types of opportunities. And so I still stand by what we do. And I think everybody is, and every situation is different. It's just unfortunate that these types of things keep like they happen. It's life.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's something, and maybe it's a broad question again, but what do you say to people that are struggling with that right now? So say if this happened to another local business in town, what can you say to give them, or maybe try and help them through this situation? What are your recommendations to them?
Oh, uh, well, remember I told you I was listening to a podcast the other day and I felt like completely called out.
Yeah.
It was reading all of the like their terrible thoughts that about myself, all the mistakes I've made. One of the things that she said that really stuck with me is that um, in order to be really, really loved by the people that get you, you have to be hated by some people.
That's pretty
Otherwise,
fair.
you just have to
Yeah.
be kind of, quiet and
Hmm.
mediocre. And well, mediocre is just fine. Hey, some people totally, hey, I've been great with that for the most part. I am a mediocre housekeeper. I am.
It's kind of a battle in itself though, right? Because it's again, it's we tell people and we try to tell people, to speak up and to not be silenced, as women, right? Like we want to, it's like a double-edged sword kind of thing, or a double-edged sword, because we try to tell ourselves, like, you know what, I'm going to be brave, I'm going to empower myself, I'm going to stand up for myself. And then unfortunately we have comments and these things that just kind of overpower us, and then we start second guessing ourselves, and we're like, wait, was that the right decision? Should I have done that? So everything that our intention was of doing something good, it just spirals, right? And like, it's just really difficult. I've been in a
Mhm,
situation like that multiple times, not even as like a business owner. I remember I
mhm,
shared something on my personal Facebook and I was attacked heavily. And I find it, it's hard. It's hard to find what, like, a happy medium. I don't like.
mhm. Well, here's the other thing that comes into play here. And when I say the word women, please know that I'm including, AFABs and people that don't that no longer or never did identify as women. But when little girls are born, they're
Hmm.
typically raised and socialized to be very aware of and caring of other people's feelings. Like they are raised to often to please, like that is how
Hmm.
they are valued. And so that's why I think so many of us are so worried all the time about upsetting other people, because to
Hmm.
upset someone means rejection from the social group. It means back talking because we're not really allowed or taught to be assertive, because
Hmm.
assertive means you're going to upset someone.
Yeah.
But girls being afraid to upset someone and always being conditioned to be polite is what gets them in a state where they become victimized.
Hmm.
Right, our inability to just say no, I don't want to go with you, no, I don't want to do this, because we don't want to upset them. We are
Hmm.
socialized to not upset people, and
Hmm.
I think it's paralyzing.
Hmm. Yeah, I could agree with you. Something else since we were on the health topic of things, something else I wanted to mention, and that you and I had previously discussed, was um the hysterectomy conversations that,
Hmm.
I mean, has impacted and affected a lot of women that I personally know. Through I was diagnosed with endometriosis a few years ago, endometriosis and adenomyosis. There is no cure for endometriosis, but there is a cure for adenomyosis, which is a hysterectomy. Unfortunately, with a lot of women that I have kind of formed a friendship with through this trauma, it has we've been told by multiple doctors that basically we should keep our uteruses, because even though it's causing us extreme pain and we are doubled over, and it's chronic pain essentially, we're basically told that we should be keeping our uteruses because our partners in the future can want us to have kids, that I could change my mind, that there's still opportunities. And one actual doctor told, or gynecologist, sorry, told me that there's still hope for me and that I can find someone if I keep my uterus. I'm single. So I'm assuming there's a connection with that. Just a little backtrack on that, or just a little extra information on that. So I just, and it happens more often than none, right? And I think that was the biggest difficulty through this whole process for myself personally, going through my health battle, and finding out that I could not have children, and finding out that, or having multiple doctors until this one, that I have, my specialist in Toronto, she's incredible, tell me that, unfortunately, no, you should keep it, because you're not going to find a man if you don't, and it's just, I think it's crazy, and it's just it happens so often, and that's what we kind of going back into about choices. That it's my body, it's my choice. I'm telling you that this is. I think this is not think. I know that this is the path that I need to take for my own health. I have a support system in place. I have everything. I've done everything right. This has been a 2 year, well, in total, it's been a 10-year battle, but it's been for the last 2 years. You know what I mean? I've personally been able to come to terms with everything. I always tell people, I remember when even you told me that you were pregnant, and you were upset, and like, not upset that you were pregnant, but you got a little bit emotional. And I remember saying, please don't let my pain take away from your happiness. And I always tell women that. I have a lot of friends that have a lot of kids. I'm a very lucky aunt. But I still think it's very detrimental, like for me to be in those types of situations, and also hear women from across the world going through this. It's not just in Canada. And I think that it blows my mind that, it's been female doctors as well that have said this to me. I just think it's mind blowing that we're put in this predicament and we're having these conversations at this day and age. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the fact that if a person is essentially not allowed to choose to be child free,
Mhm.
person that has had multiple children still cannot make that choice to have permanent birth control. There's many hospitals that require their partner's signature,
Yeah.
their partner's consent to be able to have permanent birth control, or it's endless, and it's just
Mhm.
this kind of valuing people only because they can reproduce, even if
Mhm.
that's not a value that they have. And it's awful, it's dangerous, and it holds us all back because it's
Mhm.
just trying to control other people for what really shouldn't affect any other person.
Yeah, I agree.
That
It's
your pain
just,
was right, your pain was written off, that
yeah.
you had to go from doctor to doctor, emergency room after emergency room visit,
Mhm.
in doubled over in pain, for people to say, oh, it's just your period,
Oh
it's
yeah.
just PMS.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And there was also multiple, and I'm not trying to. There was multiple times I went into I personally went into the hospital, and I was in the emerge, and doubled over in pain, and right away, are you pregnant? No, I can't get pregnant. Well, we're gonna take a pregnancy test anyways. Okay, sounds good. Let's just
Right.
waste my time. That's
Well,
fine.
and they'll do if a person is in a car accident, they will do a pregnancy test before they put in the X-ray machine,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they have to make sure, right?
yeah.
Like, your life is still not valued as much, still,
Mhm.
to this day and age. Wow, I'm mad because I'm I'm
Yeah,
getting
we're
a little
getting
hot
somewhere.
here.
Actually, I am too. I was like, did I turn up the heat before here or something? I don't know. I'm getting,
Right.
yeah, it might be my hormones. That's the next topic, is hormones and women, and how we're apparently crazy when we cry or we get upset. I am a crier. I've always been a crier. But, well, in my defense, I'm a crier now because I used to fight people back in the day. That's how I handled my anger. I wasn't a good thing to do, so don't do it. Don't recommend. But I also boxed. I was able to do a lot of things. And unfortunately, my health doesn't allow me to do that. I have a hormonal imbalance. And so my emotions sometimes get the best of me. With that being said, there's a lot of women that respond. I don't think I don't know. This topic gets me heated, and it always has. I get very frustrated talking about these types of emotions and women, and how we're perceived to be crazy, and because we say, we react certain ways. And I just wanted to kind of open the floor to that conversation, because I know we have lots to talk about it.
Hmm. uh, I've had, I guess you could say, the opportunity to really understand in multiple different experiences how hormones were affecting how I
Mhm.
felt. Like, even just with tracking a cycle, and understanding, starting to understand, oh, here's the whole flux of the hormones, and oh, look at how different you're reacting to the same thing that you were fine with yesterday. So
Mhm.
it's, and then of course the crash after the miscarriage, after the pregnancies, like the crash, like our hormones are very much have a hold over how we express and how we feel. But the other thing is also the socialization piece, because I'm telling you, as a therapist, we are so trained to suppress
Mhm.
that when it finally boils over, our
Mhm.
emotional expression is usually that much more amplified. And that's where we get that kind of, oh yeah, just women. Just, oh, it's crazy. It's crazy talk. Super hyper emotional. Like it is driven by hormones, but it's also the socialization piece.
Mhm. What do you exactly mean by the socialization piece? Can you just like explain that a little bit more?
Well, like I was saying about how we are socialized to please, right? To keep people happy.
Right.
So we
Okay.
suppress our emotions a lot
Hmm.
until we boil over,
Yeah.
right? We implode. Women are more likely to be self-harmers, more likely to do superficial cuts or even develop habits that hurt ourselves because we're suppressing so much, or we'll explode and be hyper emotional and more likely to cry. It's this
Hmm.
kind of this push and pull between our ability and our how normal it is to be able to be upset about something and have
Yeah.
that be acceptable.
Hmm.
And then also now also hormones enter the mix, and how most scientific studies on the human condition are not done with women in mind because they can't control for the hormonal cycle.
Wow, that's really interesting. I actually didn't realize that. Hmm.
Yeah, men are easier to study because they supposedly, they don't have the rise and the fall every single month.
Right.
But
Yeah. I we could keep going on this, but we're gonna move along. It's definitely, I think it's interesting. Even in past like previous relationships. My emotions have been extremely different. Like it's not been irrational or anything like that by any means, but I have just been different, I guess, and still to this day, I guess I was always viewed as in when it comes to a relationship, when I was in one, I actually wasn't the crier. I didn't cry. I turn things off kind of thing when it comes to that. And that's something that has been said about me. They're like, that's been a complaint, I guess. And it's funny when I look at, like my life now and how different I've grown and how different, my life has been in the last few years. It's just completely, it's just wild. It's just been a wild ride, that's for sure, with hormones. I mean, as we all kind of go through, and I just kind of wanted to go into, I found this it's actually from Planned Parenthood, which is interesting. It's an article and it talks about women and stereotypes. And it really talks about so it goes into personality traits, and it says, for example, women are often expected to be accommodating, as you kind of mentioned, and emotional, while men are usually like expected to be self-confident and aggressive. And again, these are just stereotypes. I just needed to read this because I just find this entertaining. So domestic behaviors. So for an example of this, so some people expect the women to take care of the children, to cook, to clean the home, while men take care of the finances, work on the car, and do some home repairs. Sorry, I just like to work on the car. And occupations, some people are quick to assume that teachers and nurses are women, and that pilots, doctors, and engineers are men, business owners are men. And I laughed like that one, same thing. It's just entertaining. And then the physical appearance is that, for example, for women should be expected to be thin, to be graceful, to, have long hair, to groom themselves all the time, to look the certain way. And that's kind of where I wanted to kind of go into with you, is to talk about those stereotypes and what we're supposed to look like. And I think we've had some changes in the last few years. I've, even to magazine covers, I've seen women that are normal size. Not normal, I shouldn't say that word, but you know what I mean. They're regular, most, regular size women and people. They're human, and it's nice to see. But I think we still have a long way to go when it comes to these types of things. Even in multiple past relationships I've had, the men I've dated have been extremely intimidated by my work experience and my career. So I wonder if you have kind of gone through that with yourself, or or if you've been personally stereotyped with being a woman in business, or
hmm. Well, I'm sure I have, but well, one of the things that I've encountered a lot, and I have male colleagues. This does
Mhm.
not happen to them. Uh, Myself and other female business owners that I know very frequently get approached expecting free services.
Right.
We
Yeah.
very, very frequently will get like, the request that'll break your heart, and just, oh, well, can't you just do it for free? We don't have much of a budget for this. And we'll go like, oh, okay, well, we want to help. This
Mm.
is why we're in this business. But um, we got to pay the bills. And
Yeah.
then, the the worst part is that you're made to feel guilty. You're
Right.
kind of shamed for it. Like, well, if you were a more caring therapist, or if you were, aren't you a social worker? Aren't you supposed
Oh,
to do stuff
wow.
for your community? Like, it's very, there's a lot of guilt and shame that I think is used in towards women, uh,
Hmm.
especially women business owners. Like, oh, we should know better.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas my male colleagues don't face the same. Like,
Right.
when their time is requested, it's expected that people have to actually pay for a service.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely, yeah, I could, it's just crazy what we deal with.
Except if you got a buddy that works on cars.
That
Nobody wants
killed
to
me.
pay them.
Work on the car. I just, oh, that got me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I want to
I
talk a
was,
little bit about the body image piece, though.
yeah, please do. Let's get into it.
Uh, as some people know, obviously, I've had a big interest apart from the trauma work in working with disordered eating, specifically binge eating disorder. And, statistics show basically that women tend to develop their first bouts of disordered eating and body image issues as young as 8 years old.
Wow.
And I actually remember myself that
Hmm.
I was 8 when I first started to remember that, or started to realize that my body was not acceptable. That as it was, that um, whether it was the diet that my parents had me on, whether it was the lifestyle that we grew up in, or whether it was genetics or whatever it was, I was not acceptable. And I started dieting that young. And ever since
At 8 years
then,
old, you were dieting?
yes,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
And I've met many, many people that have the same story. Uh,
Hmm.
to, there's been so much put into the works in terms of like body acceptance, health at every
Hmm.
size. But then there's also that kind of pushback from doctors saying, no, you have to do it this way. You have to do it this way. Meanwhile, they do these long-term studies on people
Hmm.
with moderated diets, with all the access to counseling and all these kinds of things, and they don't work long-term. That
Right.
within 2 years people gain it back. And I talk about that as in, fat being an issue that people
Mhm.
are often targeted for, but it's everything.
Yeah.
It's my mother-in-law that used to go to Weight Watchers because she couldn't gain weight, and how she would be looked down upon by the other people in the group because, well, oh,
Hmm.
we wish we had that kind of an eating disorder, or those body image has stopped me from pursuing so many opportunities because I'm always afraid of what that people will reject me because of the way I look.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's such a widespread thing that even a person can't even necessarily go speak in public without being
Hmm.
sexualized.
Yeah.
They can't. Like,
Yeah.
a person that tries to speak out on bas- basically things that we all know about the environment and how important it is to address climate change gets sexualized even though they are not even adults yet,
Mhm.
or they get called out on what they chose to wear or how they look as opposed to what they're saying.
I find that that actually happens more often than none. That's what I see. There's been multiple. I mean, like I said, I'm always on the like online kind of thing, right? And looking at social media and learning about what's kind of happening in the world. And the takeaway from people's brilliant speeches or and it just turn into what their clothes are and what they're looking like, or oh, they cut their hair and they don't. They it's just mind blowing to me that we're still sitting here in 2023 and going through this. Like I get heated when I talk about it because it's just for me, I would rather look at the matter at hand and that's just how it always has been. But I was bullied all my life too. Like I was it was awful what I mean a lot of us have gone through. And to turn down working opportunities, I've been there and it's been unfortunate that it happens. Like, and that's just the honest truth though. It happens to people, everyone, and it's not just women when we talk about that type of subject, right? Like I know we had a previous podcast episode about toxic masculinity, and we talked about men and bullying and being bullied is what I meant. Sorry. And it happens to everyone, and I just can't imagine it. And it feels like 1 month I feel like we have a handle on things and things are getting better, and then the next thing you know I feel like some disaster like disaster happens and it just gets worse and worse. So I don't know what we can do. um
Mhm.
to
I
keep
find
to
it I find it very difficult to, uh, I don't want to say hop on bandwagons, but just to be
Mhm.
responsive at all about the whatever crisis is hitting the news.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I've said to you before, like I have problems putting up a decal to show my support for this and that, because one day you're going to have to take it down. And I guarantee you that that issue will not be resolved by the time you take that decal off your window.
Yeah.
So what is it? Do we change our Facebook profile picture? Are we making anything different? And are we getting then attacked for not
Oh.
supporting? How many times have we been attacked in our business for
Mhm.
not being supportive of whatever was going on at the time, or saying the wrong word? Actually
Yeah. Or
using an
actually we
exclamation point. Using using an
yeah.
exclamation point when we
I was
shouldn't have.
yeah, we got attacked for using, yeah, we actually did. And and something which you and I've talked about on another episode as well is that when this situation that took place, we were saying, this is we were saying like do what you have to do to heal. And we didn't choose a side. And we did, but we didn't. But it's kind of hard to talk about, but we won't go into it, but because it'll
We
get
weren't we
brought up
weren't
again.
throwing our neighbors and friends and the people we
Yeah.
know under the bus for
Mhm.
what they chose to do with their holiday. Basically,
Yeah.
that's all we were
That's
doing.
literally, yeah. We just
Because
said
yeah,
heal, choose the way, however you need to heal. You take this as an opportunity. We support you, heal, and and celebrate how you want to celebrate. And well, that didn't work for a lot of people and or someone. And and it's hard to stand for something personally working in the position that I'm in. It's hard to we meet and myself and Linda, like we meet and we talk about these types of things now and more often. And we have like a social media strategy. We have a marketing strategy. We have a method to our madness, I always call it. um but it often changes in the world that we live in today. I'll be on the course to do something, and then if something happens in the media, then it's we have to I have to be flexible, and we have to change these types of things that we want to put out sometimes. And it's hard because I do want to, we want to, I think I personally would like to have more of a voice on certain matters, but we do have to kind of I feel like we do become silenced in a sense in certain ways because we don't want it to impact the clinic and because we do so much great work at Kelly Mental Health, right? And I know a lot of other local businesses go through this. Businesses across the world go through this, obviously. I mean, it's one day you're up and the next day you're down, and that's what happens. And if you say something wrong, then right away this cancel culture is just getting ridiculous. um it has been for a long time, and it's scary. And that's what the difficult thing is. And to talk about these women's issues, we've talked about heavy topics on this podcast right now. We've talked about abortion, we've talked about women's rights, we talked about women in the workplace and all these types of topics. And who knows, tomorrow we could post it, or next week we could post it and we could get canceled.
yeah.
and
Well, and
you know
that's what's so scary about it too, because it's not about perfectionism. It's not
Mm,
about trying to please everybody. It's just that, when the stakes are so high that you say
yeah,
one wrong thing, or maybe it's taken out of context, or it hurts someone. It's like we're not talking to hurt someone, but we are
no,
talking to recognize that women do face an uphill battle still. Women are
yeah,
still paid less than 80 cents on the dollar in Canada for the same job that men are doing.
mhm,
Women, their gender expression is challenged and belittled and minimized, and it is considered in popular culture more embarrassing to wear girl clothes if you're not a girl than to wear guy clothes. It's
mhm,
like, this kind of
I
silly
know.
silly stuff. And there are people in the world that, well, really the civilized world we thought was all around us, are campaigning to take away people's rights to bodily autonomy, to take away their ability to work, to keep them in poverty. And that
Mm,
scares the crap out of me.
I
Because
know.
as a therapist, as a mental health professional, as a woman, as a mother, as a boss of a lot of women who have,
Mhm,
people that they take care of, that scares me, because that means hatred is
mhm,
growing. And this
yeah,
is this is not the time. There are bigger things to deal with right now than hating each other and
mhm,
taking away people's rights.
mhm. I agree. Was that your final thought? because it
Oh man.
sounded, I know, how do you have a final thought to this, such a broad topic, right? I think the key thing that we wanted to kind of get on here and discuss today was obviously, multiple issues that we brought up. But if something is, if you want to talk about these things, talk about them. And you and I, we, like I said, we've gotten into trouble before because we've said certain things or we haven't said certain things. But you know what? At the end of the day, I'm still proud of us that we have taken that route, like that route. And I think it defines and shows who Kelly Mental Health Clinic is. The fact that it is extremely comfortable to come into our organization and to feel that, like we kind of say, like, to make sense of chaos and that's happening. There's so much chaos. So that's what we're there for. And if something is going on in your workplace, or if something is taking place, you need to speak up, but do it the appropriate way, I guess, is my recommendation from this. And that's what I want people to take away from this, is that we need to have these difficult conversations. We need to keep speaking up as women and as people in general, because I think that's the only way that we're going to be able to continue to be connected in some different types of ways, and to be able to navigate through our chaos that we got going on in this lovely world.
How
So,
else will we break these cycles of trauma? How else will we be able to fully reach our potential, reach the potential of everybody working together, our
mhm,
collective knowledge and stories? And but we can't do that when we keep perpetuating these cycles of holding people down and
mhm.
not recognizing the challenges that people face. And again, like, I'm saying this from the perspective of a privileged white woman, right? I've got my stories, but many other people have had it so much
Mhm.
worse. But on a day like today, it's just something that I'm glad that we're not sort of minimizing it and just putting up a picture and happy Women's Day, and
Yeah.
because there's so much to talk about, and just
Yeah.
this idea that I even feel like I don't know enough to talk about it, and then I just ranted for a good half an hour.
I know.
Like,
I know. I feel the same way. I even, like I said, I get that. And I'm really proud that we took a different route this year. Um, I just think that, instead of posting a picture, I think having a conversation with your employees, with your team, seeing how everyone's feeling and seeing, and I'm not coming at it from a woman's perspective. I'm just saying in general, check in with your team, check in with the workplace culture, check in to see if they're okay, because something could be happening. You know what I mean? We don't talk about these things enough, and I think it's just so important than posting a picture. So I hope that we can continue doing this on a yearly basis more often. I know that
if we
we
don't get
stopped.
canceled tomorrow because we're not ready to make nice.
I know. Yeah, but we'll post the chicks, which also changed their name. We're not gonna do this. Anyways, final thoughts, Linda.
um, yeah, I think at some point you just got to stand up for what you believe in, especially if what you believe in is going to help everybody around you. And I want to do that. I want to stop being so scared all the time. I want to get the hell out of my own way. And I want to help
Mhm.
other people get out of their way too, and do good in this world.
Well, I'm excited to see what we come up with. 2023 is going to be an interesting year coming from Kelly Mental Health Clinic. So, as always, I appreciate everyone that has tuned into this episode. I know that it is a little bit difficult to have these conversations, and I'm really happy for us to, that we took this approach this year. So thank you, Linda, for taking your time and having this rant with me. It's been fun. So, as always, we are located in Thunder Bay, Ontario. You can visit www.kellymentalhealth.com to learn more about all the things that we do in our community. We have events coming up. We have the KMH Wellness Foundation Gala that is taking place on May 5th. Perfect time to have a night out with your girls. One, you could get a full table, and you can also take your mom out, take your friends out, have some fun. And it is in support of the KMH Wellness Foundation, which raises money to help those who cannot afford to access mental health services. They also have other mental health initiatives. You can look at their website as well. Everything is linked at www.kellymentalhealth.com. And yeah, we hope to see you guys again. This was fun, and have a great day, and happy International Women's Day.